Good morning again. Good morning to those of you joining us online on this lovely October weekend. We're going to... Good morning.
Morning, Roger.
We're going to start with
Good morning,
Heaven
Roger.
Guide Me, which is, we could all use a little guidance right now. Here we go. Papa, 1, 2, 3.
Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. When I'm lost and confused, heaven lead the way. When I'm reaching for you, will you meet me halfway? Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. When I'm lost and confused, heaven lead the way. When I'm reaching for you, will you meet me halfway? Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. When I'm lost and confused, heaven lead the way. When I'm reaching for you, will you meet me halfway? Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. When I'm lost and confused, heaven lead the way. When I'm reaching for you, will you meet me halfway? Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Heaven guide me, heaven show me the way. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Show me the way. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Show me the way. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Show me the way. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Show me the way.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Framett, and I'll be your platform assistant today. And I'd like to welcome everybody to Unity Church. Good morning. I'd like to make a special welcome to the people zooming in. We know you're there. We appreciate your support. But I have some news for you. Last week, I had the opportunity of zooming in, and I really enjoyed it, but it's so much better to be here. So if you can do it, we have air purifiers. If you choose to wear a mask, everybody's like 100% supportive. So we look forward to seeing you in person, but until then, we're glad you're on Zoom. So I'm going to start out with a prayer, and you have to pay attention from the beginning because it's very short. Spirit, please heal my fear-based thoughts. That's it. Deb Engel managed to write an entire book on these 7 words. And in that book, she gave many, many examples of how we think we have a health emergency, and we worry about it and think of all the horrible things that can happen. And then when the time comes, oh, it was just a little bump, and put a little salve on it, and you're fine. All that time, we could have been experiencing joy and living in the moment, but instead we choose to worry about things that may or may not happen. And Deb claims that it really works, so just one more time, join me. Spirit, please heal my fear-based thoughts. And I believe it works. And so we have announcements. And at the beginning of the announcements, I'd like to remind you that at unityalbany.org, everything I'm going to say is there. And the only difference is unity.org doesn't make mistakes. So, we got it up? Okay. So actually, I do have one planned announcement. About 2 weeks from now on Saturday, it's October 29th, we're going to have a work party, probably 10 in the morning. And so we'll get that on the website in the next few days. One of the things about these work parties, you can do one of two things. You can show up and say, I wonder what there is to do. But some of us, you might say, I know something at Unity that needs to be done, and I know how to do it. You might be familiar with the kitchen, and you say, I know that there's some things that need to be organized. If you were to come here with your own plan, share it with the Buildings and Grounds Committee. If you want to paint the sacristy purple, probably not a good idea. But share it with somebody and just come with an idea. Here's what I'm going to do to make my home better. Do it, and then you're free to go as soon as you're finished. The next announcements. One song is moving in November, not yet, but in November. It's moving to the first and third Sundays. But today, it's still October. And tonight we have the fest. Oh, that's next week? Right, October 23rd. I'm jumping ahead. Okay, next week it's still October. And we're having, I think it's the Hindu festival. The Festival of Light is the theme. Next announcement. Today, Gregg Levoy is the main speaker in the service and is doing a workshop this afternoon at 12:30. And Gregg is going to tell you about it instead of me.
Good morning, Unity of Albany folks. Gregg Levoy here, coming to you from the West Coast, where it is still dark. But I am delighted to be able to visit with you again and look forward to sharing some thoughts with you both in the service and in a workshop this afternoon, which I'll tell you a little bit more about at the end of my presentation. But I very much look forward to sharing the morning with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Gregg. Next announcement, starting this Wednesday, I hope, 6:30 on Wednesday, we're starting, Reverend Brigid's going to have meditation. It's completely on Zoom, but it's 6:30 on Wednesday, starting this week. And again, I want you to look at the, it's the next announcement, forget about it. Unity Albany has a thought for the day. It changes every day. You dial our phone number, 518-453, go to extension 15, and again, this phone number is at unity.albany.org. And each day there'll be a new thought for the day. It kind of like replaces the daily word, but it's just as good. And the next slide, we are a praying community. We have a large team of prayer chaplains, and if you give us a request, we'll get praying for you here for close to a month, and then turn it over to Unity, Silent Unity, and they'll pray for a month. So feel free to give us your prayer request. You can email us at unityprays@unityalbany.org, dial the phone number, dial extension 13. Thanks. And before the daily word, I don't see any new faces, but are there any new people that, if stand up if you feel free or not. But my wife, Dottie Frame, is the president of the board. She said, Dottie, raise your hand. So feel free to see Dottie or Heather Dedell's in the back row. Feel free to see them or any of us after the service, and we'll tell you more about Unity of Albany and why we're glad you're here. Yes, fellowship outside. a simple fellowship. So today's daily word, the theme is joy. And say with me, I delight in simple joys. Joy, it has been said, comes much more from wanting than from having what we already want. Let me say it again. Joy, it has been said, comes much more from wanting what we already have than from having what we want in the future. Reflecting on this thought, I embrace the simple joys that this day offers. I enjoy my morning coffee or tea, savoring its flavor and fragrance. Walking through my neighborhood, I greet my friends, smile at people I haven't met yet, and enjoy the fresh air. I find satisfaction in taking care of my home, working at my job, or helping a friend. Even if I am not with them today, I feel joy as I think about the connection with the people I care most about. I know joy whenever I look for possibilities rather than focusing on problems. My greatest joy is my awareness that wherever I am, whatever I am doing, God is always with me. And from Psalms, you show me the path of light. In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Thank you.
All right. By the way, the Zoom link for Gregg's workshop this afternoon is right on our webpage. I put it up this morning. Go to unityalbany.org. You'll see his picture. Click on it. You'll see the information. You'll see a registration link, and you'll see the Zoom link. If you just do the Zoom link and show up and you don't do the registration link, we'll see you and we'll track you down. So.
And hug you to pieces.
Lovingly.
Right.
So yeah, you can pay online or later on, whatever you need, but we'd love to see you there.
We're in rare form.
Okay. We'll do this song by our friend Mark. God is home, and we've been in the far, far country. From a quote from Meister Eckhart. Every day is a relentless miracle. Every day is a push and pull.
How's that? Like halftime, what you're doing.
Sorry. Mark couldn't be here, so we got to do it with him. Try that again. Every day is a, I think you're going to have to sing it with me, Pete.
Miracle. Every day is a push
can help me too.
and pull.
Professionals, here we are.
Every day is a
Beloved teacher who demands
to be paid in full.
every day
Is
is a friendly robber.
every day
Is an
open door.
every day
Is a
glaring opportunity. Every day is the sweetest
holy road.
God is at home, and we've been in the
Far, far country,
God is home.
God is at home, and we've been in the far, far country. God is home, and we get closer every day. Every day's a dusty desert road, thirsty for the evening dew. Every day is a heart still longing for the love that's true. God is at home, and we've been in the far, far country. God is home, and we get closer every day. God is at home, and we've been in the far, far country. God is home, and we get closer every day. Tomorrow is a lie we tell ourselves, because it never arrives. Yesterday's a dusty book upon the shelf, but today is where we live our lives. God is at home, and we've been in the far, far country. God is home, and we get closer every day. One more time. God is at home, and we've been in the far, far country. God is home, and we get closer every day.
There is such energy in this room today. So I want to add my welcome at this moment and thank you for being here, whether you are here physically present in this sanctuary or you are in Zoomlandia on the West Coast like Gregg, or somewhere here in the Capital District, or maybe in Michigan like my daughter, Paris like John. And as many of you know, the life I had before I became your minister almost a year ago is I was an English teacher. And so I'm really excited about the topic today, the power of the stories we tell ourselves, because some of those stories are so life-giving, and some of those stories are lies we tell ourselves. And so I invite you to think about those stories that are alive for you. The trip with my parents to Ireland was alive with stories of my mom's family and all of that, and yet there are stories that we tell ourselves that keep us from living fully. So let's hear what Gregg has to say about that as we enter our time together this morning. So I invite you to take a breath and feel yourself arriving wherever you are. Know that we are grateful that you're with us today. And as I like to begin my welcome with the words of the psalm, we give thanks to the Eternal One, to the Holy One, for God is good. God's love endures forever. And so we give thanks to this is the day that love has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And here at Unity of Albany, those of you that it's your first or you're close to your first time, we have a vision and a mission that is really dear to us, that we come together weekly to try and live into that vision and that mission. And so as we see the slides come up, we say that together, and if you're at home, we feel your presence with us. And I invite you to really hold the vision that you have individually. What does it mean when we say a world transformed? So pause and breathe into your own vision for that. And know that collectively, we hold that vision together. So that when we say these words, they're not just words, they're an invitation to live into this vision, a world transformed through the spiritual awakening of all. And as we awaken individually and in our collective, we hold this mission. We recognize that there are people and beings in our lives that it is so easy, blissfully easy, to hold their divine essence. And there are situations and people individually that it is really challenging for us to remember that we are one. So we pause and we breathe into that as well. So that when we say these words, we give each other the strength to live into our mission. So we say together, we awaken to and embrace the divine essence of all beings through prayer and service in our community and in the world. And we draw strength from this power, the power of Christ's love now releases me from any sense of separation from spirit or others. There is only one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, the all-loving goodness of God. And so it is. And breathe that in as we continue in our service.
So we'll lead into our meditation time, which will be led by Pete this morning. With this chant, Spirit Am I, comes directly from A Course in Miracles.
Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I. Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, Spirit am I, Spirit am I, Spirit am I.
Spirit am I. Invite you to soften your gaze, close your eyes, look downward, breathing deliberately. A few intentional breaths as we begin a short period of meditation. Noticing the inhale and the exhale. Feeling it in your chest as the air comes in. Passing through your nose and your mouth on the way out. And just taking that breathing into your body to some sensation that stands out. With permission to use the time exactly as you prefer, if any words do not serve. Releasing needs, expectations for just a moment. Letting the body settle, the thoughts slow just a little, and loving those that just pop in. Loving the restlessness that may be there. Loving the unsteadiness that may want to do something. Just loving the experience we're having as exactly as it needs to be. Releasing little by little. And noticing that the body cooperates when we just love it. That spirit that we all are, that is there before the emotion, before the stirring. That just allows us to watch and settle. Inviting you, if you choose, to take attention into the pulsing in your body. The heart beating, the energy flowing, watching with that wise mind. Whatever comes up in that space. And entering into surrender from there, from that space of stillness or unrest. The wise spirit inside and outside, knowing the wisdom of both, loving what is, loving it exactly as it is, and seeing how the body responds when it's just allowed to be right there. Breathing intentionally as we slowly enter into a brief moment of silence.
Recording in progress.
Loving everything just as it is. Exactly as it's supposed to be in this moment. Spirit are we. Feeling your neighbor's energy and sending love silently to the people around you. If you're at home, to your neighbors, to your pets, knowing that at the spirit level they are perfect, just like we are. Having a human experience. While still being spiritual beings with an enormous capacity for love and peace. Sending love to ourselves into the deepest parts of our heart. Not forcing, just allowing. Seeing if the body will receive. And as we prepare to exit the meditation, reminding ourselves to be in this breath, to be in this moment. Spirit are we.
And we'd like to welcome Gregg Levoy back.
All right. Well, thank you for that lovely meditation and also for the lovely music. Thank you for that. All right. So let me jump right in. As Reverend Brigid said, I'm going to be talking about the stories we tell ourselves. So let me jump in. 3 years ago, I moved from Asheville, North Carolina to Santa Cruz, California. And that was a decision that was complicated by the fact that my twin brother lives there and has for 40 years. And moving to his town would require that we not only run afoul of our long-standing policy that there ain't no town big enough for the two of us, meaning that we need our own turf. But I figured would certainly trouble the ghost of our mother, who instilled that taboo in us with her insistence from the day we were born that we were going to have separate identities. So there was no Ron and Dawn stuff, okay? We had separate bedrooms, separate classrooms in school. We had to take up different instruments, different hobbies, go to different summer camps, even different bus stops, okay? So when I told my brother Ross of my interest in considering Santa Cruz as a place to relocate and shared with him my concern about moving to his town, he initially shrugged it off. He said, 15 years ago, I probably would have agreed, but I'm over it. So one day during a month-long experiment in dating Santa Cruz, in other words, living there for a month to see if it was actually a fit, I went into the grocery store that's around the corner from his house, the one that he frequents. And when the cashier asked if I wanted a receipt, and I said yes, she said, "Really? You never want a receipt." So I got to say something to her that I say a lot since I moved to Santa Cruz. I'm not who you think I am. And I love the look on people's faces when I say that. And this happens about once a week and has for several years because he knows everybody. I said, I'm not who you think I am. I'm his twin brother, and I'm not pulling your leg. And I'm the twin who always wants a receipt. So later that same day, Ross went into the same grocery store, just independent of me, stood in the same checkout line, and the same cashier said to him, "I saw your other half today," not realizing what a loaded remark that is for a twin. That night, my brother told me he had the first of a number of nightmares about the prospect of me moving to his town, including in one dream, avalanche, in another dream, a mudslide, in a third dream, a Tyrannosaurus Rex tearing up the town of Santa Cruz. So turns out he was not over it, nor was I, really. And this is not surprising, all right? It's not surprising because the prohibition against living in the same town was among the longest standing stories of our life together. And we were not going to just edit it out without some backlash. But it was the only way we were able to grow beyond that story and even consider living in the same town was to confront that story and to hash it out together and separately, all right? So the fact is, we all have stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, about how it is, about what we're capable of, what can and can't be done, why we succeed or fail, what we can expect from life. And I think we do that because we are storytelling animals. And we tell stories, we create stories really to help us figure things out, to help us make sense of life, to give us a framework for making decisions, really, all right? But those stories can sometimes turn against us, especially the negative stories or the constricting stories like, I'm not the creative type, or I'm powerless to change the world, or I'm a victim, or people are untrustworthy, or vulnerability is weakness, or 1,000 others, of course, right? And I think they become self-limiting when they come up against what I think of as life's primary agenda, which is to grow, all right? And they can undermine our belief, like we have here in the New Thought world, that we are each an expression of God and therefore sacred and worthy. Some of these stories can undermine that belief, that understanding, all right? And especially if the stories we're telling ourselves become lies of identity, like I am what I do, right? Or I am what I have, or I am what other people think of me, all right? And these are not just big stories like lies of identity. I think anytime you catch yourself having a strong reaction to something or someone, knee-jerk anger, for instance, unexpected defensiveness, irrational fear, I think you're probably dealing with a story that's become so internalized and unconscious that you don't even really hear it anymore. You know, somebody makes a casual remark and it unconsciously reminds you of something your father used to say to you, and you're just off to the races. All right. You're really not even seeing things as they are anymore, but as they were, and probably stuck inside of a story that's just going to keep repeating itself unless you confront it and perhaps rewrite it. Okay. So this is not to say, by the way, that there are not some, quote, negative stories that are really important to tell. Okay. One example I can think of is the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that were set up in South Africa after apartheid, okay, and how critical they were to the healing and the justice that took place there when the victims of apartheid got a chance to very publicly tell their stories of victimization at the hands of that regime, okay? So I just want to offer a generous bow to the fact that there are some negative stories that are really important to tell. at the very least to yourself. Okay, so nor am I just talking about old stories, all right, because I think we are constantly making up stories about what we think is going on around us. You know, what someone is thinking, or what a friend meant by a remark, or what a symptom means, or what a failure says about us, right? Anytime you tell yourself you should do something, I think you're dealing with a story, all right? Anytime you hear a thou shalt not, you know, in the back of your head, probably a story. And certainly anytime you refer to the story of my life, which I think is usually something we utter in exasperation, right? It's kind of a statement of pessimism, like, that's the story of my life, right? This kind of thing. And of course, the stories we tell ourselves are not just personal, don't just belong to us. They're also cultural, multi-generational, historical. You know, big boys don't, or nice girls don't. These are gender stories that can really haunt your individual life, all right? As are cultural narratives like go to school, graduate, get married, have kids, retire, right? So this is might give some people a kind of a template to use in crafting a life, but it might also punish those who deviate from it, right? Or set up unrealistic expectations around pursuit of the American dream, okay? Stories are also handed down to us from our spiritual traditions, right? Or maybe more to the point, the religious education that many of us got, okay? I'm thinking, for instance, of the commandments listed in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, collectively referred to as the law, right? There are 613 of them. And they're passed down to us as kind of stories, right? Like, do not marry outside your religion, right? Or make no artistic representations of God. So what that means is that the painting that Michelangelo painted on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, you know, this one, blasphemy, according to that storyline, right? Another one is follow not the whims of your own heart, which would pretty much put me out of business, having written a book called Callings, you know. No tattoos, no blowing on dice, no working on the Sabbath, no rebelling against your parents. And here's one of my favorites, no trying God's patience, okay? How about a show of hands? How many of you have ever tried God's patience? So whether the stories we tell ourselves are personal or, you know, transpersonal, I think a story is a box. And when you identify with that story to the point of being stuck or spellbound, right? You are inside the box. Okay, but when you stop identifying with a particular story, or even just start to question it, you're outside the box, all right? Not that it's easy to think outside the box, no less step outside of it. Stories are powerful, right? I really want to honor stories are powerful. They shape our lives because stories become beliefs, become behaviors. Or as we say in the New Thought world, thoughts become experience, okay? They're powerful. And in other words, we don't just tell stories, they tell us. They tell us who we think we are and what we're capable of. And I think that every telling kind of rubs it in a little bit more deeply, whether the stories you tell yourself are negative or positive, as in, say, you know, affirmations, right? And the negative stories, though, are a kind of a narrowing down. They're a constriction of soul and spirit and authenticity and I think power and voice, and the knowing that we are sacred and worthy. They're too small for us. They're really too small for us. Now, expanding the stories, and thus I think our lives, starts with catching them in the act, really catching them in the act. I'm thinking of a guy named Dan McAdams, and he belongs to a branch of psychology called narrative therapy, which is specifically designed to help people change their storylines. He says, and this is the way he languages it, he says, you should interrogate yourself about the stories you tell and quit letting them have their way with you, right? And so one way to do that is, you know, like our parents sometimes would say to us, watch your language. In other words, listen to what you say to yourself. Listen to how you talk to yourself, what tone of voice you use, and for that matter, how you would feel if somebody else were telling you the kind of things you're telling yourself. How would you feel if somebody else said, you know, you're not really the creative type? That would feel kind of different than just hearing it as a constant tape loop in your own head, and you're probably used to it, right? The process of tuning into this is helped along, needless to say, immeasurably if you have like mindfulness meditation practices, or journaling practices, dream interpretation practices, right? For that matter, therapy, right? I had a therapist say to me once, after I had shared with him one of my favorite sob stories about how my family of origin had victimized me, he said, so how many times have you told that story? How many more times are you planning on telling it? Okay. And because we are always making up new stories, I think it really pays to watch how you craft them, how you get them going, right? McAdams says that those, for instance, who tell stories about challenging events in their life, but with a redemptive twist to the story. In other words, something you learned from that challenging experience, some wisdom or insight you were able to wrest from it, some way you grew as a result of it. You will tend to thrive more over the course of time than people who tell negative stories about challenging events. For instance, when I lost my job at a newspaper early in my career, I initially called it a failure. And that was the story I told about it for quite a while after that. But over time, I realized that it was by getting fired from that job that I gained precisely the motivation I needed to finally quit my job and follow the call to become a freelance writer, which I had had for half a decade at that point. All right. So by focusing on the redemptive twist in that story, I was able to turn it from a story of failure to, if not quite a story of success, at least a story of falling up. You get intuitively what I mean by that, falling up, okay? I think the mythologist Joseph Campbell used to call it a directive crisis, okay? So we're not just the protagonists of our stories, we're the narrators. All right, we're the narrators. We're in charge of the stories, which I think is one reason why it is imperative to separate fact from fiction, which is something we'll do in the workshop a little later this morning. All right, separate fact from fiction. For instance, my parents divorced when I was 9 might be a fact. In my case, it was actually, but it's my fault is a fiction. All right. My father was critical and emotionally absent, might be a true story. Again, it was, but I'm unworthy of love is a false story. Okay. There ain't no town big enough for the two of us might once have been true, but no longer is. Okay. So you might ask yourself, and again, we'll do this in the workshop, whether a particular story you're telling yourself is true and how true. How true, because even a shred of contrary evidence, a minor exception to the storyline, a small crack in its logic, for that matter, another way it could be told from another point of view might give you that all-important shadow of a doubt that can help you question the truthfulness of the story and maybe unhook you from some of the limitations you've put on yourself by repeating the story over and over the years, right? Example, I've made a regrettable number of life decisions that started and ended with the phrase, I can't afford it. I can't afford it, which grinds into my subconscious a message of self-imposed limitation. It's really a kind of a rap on the knuckles of the cookie jar, all right? What's actually more accurate is I won't afford it. So this adds into the equation the critical elements of choice and power, okay? I would prefer to spend my money on car repairs rather than a new computer, okay? So you see the difference, right? Let's say you have a story, as apparently a lot of people do, that you're not the creative type. But under scrutiny, you begin to notice little exceptions to that. You go out into the garden, cut flowers, arrange them in a vase with, the purples in the back and the yellows in the front and the blues in the middle. You're being artistic. You doodle while you're talking to your dad on the phone. You're drawing. You sing along to the car radio. You're singing. You drum your fingers on the desk during a meeting at work. You're drumming. You're doing percussion, right? You write a letter to a friend. You're writing. When you dream at night, your subconscious is essentially playwriting, okay? And then maybe you realize, I am the creative type. And maybe I need to change the storyline that I'm not, okay? So under scrutiny, and again, something we'll look at in the workshop, but I want to honor that changing stories is not easy, okay? And you're not going to undo stories you may have been telling yourself for the better part of a lifetime at the flip of a switch, okay? And without some pushback, I think it's fair to say changing storylines is going to ruffle feathers. Yours, but also perhaps other people's, okay? For example, a couple of years ago, I'm hiking with my brother Ross in the mountains here, the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we're having a debate about how susceptible we are to cultural conditioning, okay? Started because he made some bold statement about being immune to advertising. And to make a point about how susceptible I thought we actually were to advertising, and not just the consumer kind, but the cultural kind, I dared my brother to hold hands with me until we reached a bend in the path 100 yards up perhaps. And he reaches out his hand, accompanied by a look that roughly translated to, I call your bluff. So here's the thing. There was clearly nobody around. There was nobody around. But the next 10 seconds provoked an outbreak of reflexes that would have put Pavlov's dogs to shame. Awkwardness, embarrassment, self-consciousness, paranoia, pure conditioning based on a story specifically about how straight men are supposed to act in this culture. It's not the same in all cultures, but in this culture, how straight men are supposed to act, okay? All we were doing was holding hands, really barely pushing a toe across the line as these things go. And all the alarm bells went off, okay? Even though we look almost exactly alike. I mean, really, how suspicious could this be? And besides, we're doing this in Santa Cruz, California. Who cares, right? And I wouldn't be a proper twin either if I didn't report to you that he broke first. Anyway, being a twin. So changing the stories, though, is hard work. Changing the stories we tell ourselves is hard work, and compassion and patience are in order, and a sense of humor would come in handy. You may have to sing yourself a different tune 100 times before it begins to sink in and really hold sway, before you even begin to believe the new storyline. But the truth is that until we begin to notice the stories we tell ourselves and confront, if not deconstruct, the core beliefs that are at the heart of those stories, the behavior that grows out of them won't change. Okay, so it was only by dialoguing with my brother and with myself that we were able to, about this story, that there is no town big enough for the two of us, that we were able to amend that story and grow beyond it. Okay, and I have to say in closing that we now live happily in the same town for the first time since we were boys. And it is truly one of the great new joys of my life, one of the great growth spurts in my life. So in closing, I just want to say that in the spirit of upgrading the stories you tell yourself, the workshop a little bit later this morning is, or this afternoon, I should say, is a very hands-on opportunity to gently explore the stories, some of the stories you tell yourself, all right? Especially the ones that may be holding you back from whatever wants to emerge in your life, and from the knowledge that you are sacred, in fact, and worthy. So I hope you'll come. And thank you so much for inviting me back. Thank you, Reverend Brigid and Roger, for having faith in my work and inviting me back. And I look forward to the workshop a little bit later. Thank you.
Oh, Gregg, I wish you could have come to talk to the high school students I was working with for 4 years, a few years ago. They would have loved that.
Oh, wonderful.
So thank you. And yes, I do hope that if you haven't signed up, that you can do so. And as Roger said, we'll lovingly come and find you. If that's it, like, that is never a reason not to do one of these beautiful things here. So come see me afterwards if you want to sign up. And that is an issue. And let's just pause in gratitude for Gregg's presence, for our presence together. Breathe in that reminder of some of those stories you may have told yourself for years. One of the stories that I am in the process of shifting myself is that story about what does it mean to recognize the abundance in my life. So one of the messages that I am trying to shift into is that recognition that there is no scarcity in the universe. All my needs are met. And to stay open to that. And part of what has pushed me in that boundary a little bit is being here. Is recognizing that part of my role as your senior minister is to pause before we ask you to give us some money. Pause before we recognize the non-money gifts that are so present in this community. Oh, am I fading in and out? Okay. So I thank you for all of those gifts. And in just a moment, we're going to say the really powerful offering blessing that is a part of our regular Sunday gathering. It's a reminder of the blessing that we are for each other. It's the reminder of the blessing of that flow that we are a part of. And so after we say that, our beautiful ushers will come by with their butterfly nets to catch your offerings from today, if you have them here. If, like me, you do Vanco, you could just put your hands over it in blessing. If your presence is your blessing today, that is also a gift. And for you at home, the screen will flash with for you to do those donations as well, if you can do that today. And so let's say together the beautiful words of this blessing. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. We are blessed to know that Spirit is our source. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. And so it is. And
Here's a wonderful song written by Pete about telling ourselves a better story.
Adorn your walls with captured vibrancy. March down the halls with all your energy. Inspire her to find her creativity. And it will be. We walk this road, we build this house in which we live. Hold up our hands, get what we have from what we give. Teach our children well who we are and what we do. Create a new planet with every wound we pass through. And it will be. There will be. There will be.
Amazing.
source of every blessing, source of love, may we use these gifts to create the world, the vision, to teach our children well. We come in deep gratitude for these blessings and all the blessings we receive here together. Amen. And so we come now to this time of holding each other in prayer. Prayers for our community, the prayers of thanks, the prayers holding in light the concerns that we might be holding, the people that we hold in prayer. So I invite you now, if you'd like to say those words out loud wherever you are, trusting that we then lift that with you, or hold it silently in your heart. No, Matt Harrison and the Harrison family. For peace, Dave and Judy. Mom and Dad, for healing. For peace. Before we say our beautiful prayer of protection, we recognize that we come in the fullness of who we are. The stories we tell each other that light us up, that help us to fall up, that we recognize with the spiritual friendships, the stories that we've told ourselves that push us down. And we break through those stories together. That we can change the world. It can be really daunting today to think that we can still change the world. I feel so much hope when I gather with you. And so let us come to this moment of holding the blanket of protection over all that's in our hearts, the people and joys and concerns that we've named, all that remains nameless. For those who have no one to name them today, we hold it all together as we say this prayer. The light of God surrounds us. We are the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. We are the love of God. The power of God protects us. We are the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. We are the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is. And all is well. We are divine, having a very human experience. And so it is. Amen. So let's sing. Stand if you would like.
Yes, and a
In
reminder,
spirit or body.
if you think you want to make it to the workshop, just go to unityalbany.org. You'll see Gregg's face right on the main page. Click on it. There'll be a registration link. There'll be a Zoom link. You can go right to the Zoom link if you want and take care of the money stuff later. We'd love to have you there. I'm looking forward to it, I have to say. Yep. Say again? There is a phone number there in that link. Yes. All right.
For Zoom. It's a Zoom.
Here we go, Ann.
Let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Oh,
from the moment that I wake up till I go to sleep at night.
I offer up my work and prayers and bring them to the light.
Let me feel the power through which we all unite. Let my life be prayer. Let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Surely you will see me through.
Take the song that I am singing, I offer it to you.
The thoughts that I am thinking, may they express anew
That you are the inspiration of everything I do. Let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Oh, let my life be prayer. Surely you will see me through.
Say it one more time.